We are back with the innovation conversation. It's been pretty much the summer since last we were here. Tom, it's great to see you.
Great to be back.
Have you had a good summer?
Summer's been good. Yeah, busy, but good.
Yeah, we've been suffering through the weather here. I don't know what it's been like in Seattle, but here on the East Coast, the weather has just been, and especially lately between hurricanes and tropical storms and 8 inches.
We've had the opposite. We've had lots of heat.
Yes.
Been very dry. And then obviously we all know about the fires that are kind of all around the West Coast. In the greater Seattle area, we're pretty good, but the state of Washington overall has been pretty ravaged by them.
Anyway, so let's start talking about I'd love to just do a little bit of a lightning round about some of the stories that have popped up since last we talked, which I think are different kinds of measures of innovation taking place in the industry. One was there were two stories that came up recently. One was about how Target-owned Shipt is basically allowing customers who are shopping online to choose the shopper in the store, and turning them into a personal shopper, so they can make a choice of that. And then the other story was about Albertsons Fresh Pass new subscription service. And it struck me that the two things, while they're totally different businesses, one of the things they both seem to be doing is something I think is important, which is trying to heighten or strengthen the connection between the store and the shopper.
Yeah, absolutely. That Shipt picking your chosen shopper is pretty amazing. I know that when people have a good experience, right, you want to, you'd love to be served by that person again and have that confidence. I can only imagine how difficult, technologically, it's probably not that hard to route that person's order to that person based on the preference, but you got to think the better shoppers are just going to be hammered with volume, right? And the less coveted shoppers, and I'm sure there's algorithms they can do to kind of load balance them and whatnot. But no, absolutely. I mean, what a great way to create that connection, right? To make it personal, through that. And on the Albertsons Delivery Pass, Albertsons is doing so many things in the loyalty space right now. It's super impressive. The idea of giving the customer, this Prime-like, benefit of knowing that, I have lower order minimums and, I've reduced that barrier to having to pay specifically for deliveries. I do think that makes a lot of sense. And if you're able to layer in other loyalty benefits into that, right? Different things with loyalty points and fuel, or different types of discounts or product introductions or auto replenishment, or if you're able to kind of connect other loyalty programs or loyalty benefits through that, it can become that much more powerful.
Yeah. Well, it would seem to me one of the things Albertsons has to do is find ways to continue to regularly talk to the customer to explain, here's a new benefit, here's a new benefit, here's a new benefit. Right? That's always been the magic of Amazon Prime, which it seems like they're always adding benefits and rarely raising prices.
Absolutely. No, that's definitely key to have the customer keep getting more and more and more. As Jeff Bezos put it, we want customers to feel irresponsible if they're not a Prime member. So you really just want to keep adding those benefits and keep the customer excited. And
to go back to the Shipt thing, I mean, you're right. The really great shoppers are going to get hammered, but what an easy way to figure out how to reward the best employees, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
If they're making more money because they're the ones who are most requested, well, that dangles a carrot in front of the people who are not doing as well. It also occurs to me, I'm not sure how, if I go online to say I want Mary to do my shopping, and Mary responds that, okay, Kevin, I'm going to do your shopping. I really don't know that Mary is doing the shopping, right? I mean, I hope they're going to be show a certain amount of integrity.
You hope there's some authenticity there for sure. Yeah, there would need to be, right? Not the Mary bot. You're doing your shopping for you.
Um, I'm curious what you thought. Then there was the story that came out about Walmart's new third creating a delivery business, delivery platform for third-party businesses, essentially saying, okay, we're gonna both serve outside retailers, and in their case, not doing what Amazon has done, which is to build its own delivery system with these gray Amazon Prime trucks, but to actually use the post office, UPS, FedEx, whoever,
Mhm.
to make the deliveries. So, and I guess in a very pure way, is only creating the platform, is not really building anything. Is that fair?
I think it's fair. I mean, I think, with the scale that Walmart has, right, which is right there neck and neck with Amazon scale overall, right? They sell globally. Amazon sells more product. In the U.S., Walmart still sells a little bit more product, but it's close. But they're right there on scale, par with Amazon. So if they're able to leverage that scale to create this virtual network of fulfillment capabilities for other folks, and then have like the systems and whatnot to make it easy and streamlined, I can see there being the benefit in that. Versus an individual retailer, kind of having to do their individual deals across all of the individual, potential partners, and all done without scale. To be able that scale, through Walmart can make some sense. I mean, it's kind of like using your scale to create a marketplace for products.
Yeah.
In this case, you're kind of, in a way, using your scale to create a marketplace or some kind of efficiencies around logistics. So I do think it makes some sense. I think it's all going to come down to the execution and the ultimate value proposition that they're able to deliver.
I guess it really also at a time when the companies like UPS and FedEx are actually raising their rates. I mean, I just got an email from FedEx today explaining that my October 1st to January 15th rates were going to be higher because it's the Christmas season and they're going to have higher costs. That doesn't really affect me. I don't really ship anything. But if everybody's getting that same email, if Walmart can use its bulk to sort of determine some economies of scale for third-party retailers, I guess that makes a kind of sense. They can build a business out of that.
It can make sense. It's still ultimately going to come down to capacity of the network versus demand for that capacity, right? And we're in a time now with e-commerce growing at the rate at which it is. We're stressing the capacity of these various networks.
Yeah. It also occurred to me that, and I don't know if this is a fair criticism or not, or observation, it also struck me a little bit, though, that Walmart's trying to be a little bit pregnant. In other words, they're trying to do what Amazon has clearly done in terms of developing a distribution network, right?
Right.
Except do it without actually having to build the distribution network. It's accessing the third-party marketplace customers or third-party retailers that even aren't part of the marketplace, and it's accessing an existing distribution network, but it's not actually building anything itself.
Right.
So
yeah, I think there's a lot to that. Amazon does do some of that as well, right? Though, so there's a bunch of Amazon's logistics capabilities that they own.
Right.
Right. They own, or they have, own and or lease planes, right? They own, and or lease a lot of the trucks that move stuff between the facilities. They obviously own and lease facilities. The general last mile providers there, the vans that show up at your house, those are independently owned.
Right.
They're certainly highly controlled by Amazon. We've talked about that, in this innovation conversation before, and some of the challenges that these providers have had with the control, and the pressures that Amazon puts on them, is can be tough. So in that case, Amazon's not really bearing the asset cost of those, but they have pretty good control over it. So I think Walmart's kind of viewing it that in this case, they don't have to bear the asset cost, that they can create this virtual network, and that the branding of the participants in the network, doesn't have to be Walmart branded, right? It's the branding of those participants.
Although I will say and I've said it here before, which is that I see more Amazon vans going up and down my street here in Connecticut then I see FedEx or post office or
Yeah.
UPS trucks, maybe even combined.
Yeah.
Um, and I mean and the Amazon Prime drivers, they know our dogs. They, it's like it's remarkable the degree to which they have that presence. And I think
That's awesome.
presence does matter in terms
Absolutely.
of brand ubiquity. Couple of Instacart stories that have popped up during the summer. One was them working with Albertsons and basically doing a test where they're actually going to provide the curbside delivery service for those stores. They're doing it in a couple of markets. They're going to roll them out to a few more markets. And I guess I heard this, and again, I don't mean to be reflexively anti-Instacart, because first of all, good on Instacart for figuring out where to get. They can do this, but and if Albertsons doesn't want to own its own trucks that it makes deliveries and it wants to outsource that to Instacart, okay, I understand why, even if I disagree with it as a philosophically.
Yep.
But if they can't be in the business of shopping their own stores, putting the stuff in a bin and bringing it out to the curb, and needing to outsource that, and again, and in the phrase you've used before, share the customer. If they're not going to do that, what are they going to do? At what point are they just giving away their business?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a constant assessment, and kind of trade-off that's evaluated. No retailer loves the logistics cost of e-commerce, right? The picking in the store, the staging at the curb, and/or the delivery. It adds a bunch of costs to, and particularly if the inventory is coming off the store shelf, right? It's adding a bunch of cost to something that's already pretty fully burdened. And so there's a lot of incentive to figure out how to do that more economically, to be able to preserve your couple points of bottom line that you're able to get out of it, if it's not e-commerce. So, I understand why retailers are looking at Instacart or other partners in this area to do that, but it is a balance of, owning the customer. Owning, that sounds terrible, but serving the customer, getting the credit for serving that customer, the emotional credit from the customer, and then being able to kind of build and leverage that brand value. It's tough. It's definitely tougher when you share it, but it is that kind of, that trade-off that's evaluated. Yeah, I mean, it's I get it, but man, if you got really good at doing your own, kind of either in-store or micro fulfillment picking, and you got really good at your own curbside delivery experience, it feels like there's, at some level of scale, you could get pretty efficient at that. And the brand value that you would create in that, would pay itself off, would be significant, and, pay for that investment many times over.
And then there was the other Instacart story, which was really interesting, that apparently they were in active negotiations, or at least talks, to be acquired for a not insignificant amount of money by DoorDash.
Well, I mean, all these last mile providers, right? For them, it's all about density, right? The more deliveries, the more stuff you can be bringing around to homes in as tight an area, as possible, or as in dense of the more value in these routes, the better. I can totally see why they would want to do that. If you think the value proposition too of, this combination of, I have this service that can bring me any of these variety of things to my doorstep, pretty much on demand. It's a pretty awesome value proposition. So I get why they would want to do that, but I also, can understand, and I think when reading about that, it was all this is rumored, of course, but
right.
That there was some concern about, FTC, challenges with that, which would make sense because that would be a pretty darn dominant player, right. In that kind of on-demand last mile. So I could see that maybe fizzling out, based on that fear. And if you look at everything that Instacart's been doing lately, as far as the changes to their team and whatnot, clearly this is a company that is, gearing up to be an advertising and media, marketing powerhouse. you know, and certainly gearing up to go public.
Yeah. I was curious what you thought about the, and again, this is a Wall Street Journal story. I don't believe Amazon has commented on it, but that they were considering the idea of opening department stores. Now, I think it's really important to clarify what is meant by department stores.
Right.
Because from the report in the journal, there were going to be 30,000 square feet. Well, that's smaller than the average Whole Foods.
Right.
And so, well, you know, I know what I wrote about it. What do you think? What did you think about that rumor or the possibility?
Well, you know, I think as Amazon keeps growing, you know, they're serving, you know, basically every product category you could want to buy. There's a number of experiences that are important to shoppers of those categories, right? So to the extent that a retail node, as they would consider it, you know, makes sense in a certain category, be it, you know, for product discovery, you know, for you know, for consultation, for returns, you know, I think you're going to see, you know, obviously we see it in the grocery space, but even across categories. And if you look at even things like Nordstrom's doing with Nordstrom Local, right? So you've got this ability to, you know, kind of interact around products in a new, novel way. Now that's a much smaller than 30,000 square foot concept. So, you know, that Amazon is thinking about doing this, to me, is not surprising. You know, there's a finite amount of retail real estate in good locations out there. We do tend to be overstored traditionally. We've talked about that, right? But you know, Amazon's going to need to have some physical presence in these areas. So to me, it makes sense that they're considering, you know, a format. I wouldn't want to get our heads too wrapped around it, what a department store is. Right. You know, if it serves a bunch of products you typically have in a department store, in what could ultimately be a novel way, you know, as part of this $500+ billion empire of sales, I could see it making sense.
Yeah, I mean, the way my first thought was that it would be more of that it seemed more likely that it might be a dark store that they happen to allow customers into. And when you bring up the Amazon,
that's dangerous. I mean, that's dangerous. And you know, I just think that this whole idea of having logistics and retail intermixed, right? It's really, really tough, right? To be a customer in a store where you're tripping over pickers, and to be a picker in an inventory node where you're tripping over customers, like neither works. So to try to do both in the same place, I think is super dangerous.
Well, I would, you know, and I didn't mean that the customer was actually walking where the pickers are. I guess what I meant.
Right. Although in fresh stores, that's certainly happening.
Yes.
Today. In Whole Foods.
Well, okay, which is the last thing I wanted to talk to you about, which was my my reaction to that one, and I wanted to be very clear. I went to one store one day, and was one Amazon Fresh store one day, was totally underwhelmed by it. Right? I mean, and although I did hear from a number of people who said they had gone to other stores at other times and had exactly the same experience, which is to say, really not very good fresh product. Again, ironic since it's called Amazon Fresh.
Right.
You know, a lot of out of stock. Some of that is probably because we have supply chain issues, but that's not the only issue. And some people thought, oh, it looked like a dark store that people just happen to be shopping to the point you just paid. Yeah. I mean, you've been to Amazon Fresh stores. Was I out of line with my criticisms? Was I choosing from too small a sample to kind of reach some of the conclusions that I reached?
Well, I think it was a small sample, but totally not out of line. I mean, that experience was terrible. And as a customer, why would you come back? Yeah. Right. So, I mean, and you know, and I think you talked about, you know, the impact of that bad first impression, right? I mean, it's significant. You know, I've been in a lot of grocery stores the last couple of months, and there are big supply chain issues out there. So lots of, I mean, out of stocks are at like epic levels right now, but not as bad as that store was. I mean, that store was really bad. I think that, I believe that is one of the stores that they're both well, you said that they're picking out of and customers are shopping out of. That's a super, super dangerous formula. Who gets the better product? The picker picks the better product for the online customer, or the customer gets the better product. You're picking good products out from underneath customers, right?
Yeah.
That's just.
Are most of the are all the Amazon are not all the Amazon Fresh stores that way?
They're not all that way yet.
Not all that way, because
No.
Everybody who wrote to me who said they'd had a problem, one of the consistent comments across the board is that there were more pickers than there were shoppers.
Yeah.
So maybe that's a common problem.
Well, I think where you have both, that can definitely be a common problem. We've done a bunch of analysis over the years that if you're going to pick out of a traditional grocery store, once your e-commerce volume gets above 10, and absolutely when it gets to 15% of that store's volume, it creates all kinds of issues, right? With in-stock issues, with labor issues, with customer experience issues. Like, it's hard to effectively mix those two things, right? A retail experience is different than a logistics experience, and when you crash those into each other, all kinds of bad things happen. The Factoria store up here in Seattle, they don't pick from. It is also just walk out technology. So it's a significantly better customer experience than you had. It's not perfect though. There are still, some in-stock issues. I would say relatively typical of what you see in other stores now. They don't have the challenge of pickers. The reason they don't is because having pickers pick for online orders in a just walk out environment is really taxing on the just walk out technology, right? Versus just the customer volume that's in there and the activities of those customers and having that work. But the experience, my experience there was the product was pretty good. It wasn't like A+ quality, but it was A quality. It was good.
Yeah.
And the just walk out experience, it's cool in a little Go store. It's like awesome in a 30,000 square foot, 25,000 square foot, grocery store. Pretty cool.
I can't help but think though that I mean, part of and maybe I'm oversimplifying it, but it seems to me what they need to find is some supermarket executive who really knows how to run stores, right? And my joke has been what they should do is hire that person, say, you just have to work for us for 2 years, because it's somebody who's maybe towards the end of their career but really knows how to make stores work. Pay them an Amazon stock and 2 tickets on one of Jeff Bezos's rockets and say, fix this. And there are people out there who could walk into that situation, and because they know passionately how to fix a store, would be able to do it.
Yeah, but then that store couldn't be a pick node anymore, right? So that's the problem, right?
Yeah.
And I do agree with that, right? That solving the store problem seems relatively straightforward. They're trying to do too much in those things now, and I do think ultimately they're going to have to separate, how these things work. And I don't know that you're going to be able to pick for online orders from the exact same shelves that you're picking in store. I think you're going to see there'll be distribution nodes in one portion of the building and retail node in another portion of the building. Is my guess.
Yeah. Well, listen, maybe they do what we've always talked about, which is they isolate the where the customer goes in, that's the fresh product. And that's not someplace the pickers go, and everything else is out in a warehouse facility.
Makes sense.
Well, listen, it is great to catch up with you. I'm glad we're going to be back on our every other week schedule now for the foreseeable future. Thanks to you all for watching the Innovation Conversation, and we'll see you next time. See you, Tom.
See you, Kevin. Thanks, everyone.